Gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to the History in the Hall Roadshow associated with the Doc Holiday Festival. We are so glad you're here, and if you're here for the Thursday night trivia, I hope you stay because I think you're going to enjoy it. It's a great show. We're going to talk about the history of our country and our county and our town. How many people know that it's America 250? Yay, thank heavens. We're going to broaden our normal show here right now. We're going to talk about, I am Dr. Sandy Atchison, four-time mayor of Denison, who was the doctor of the MKT Railroad. So I'm around 1870. That's when Doc Holliday was here, 1874. We're going to go back to the 1820s and the 1830s, and we're going to talk about the first English-speaking person who was here in Grayson County. And then we're going to come forward just about 10 or 15, 20 years, and we're going to talk about, if you don't know the story about Sophia Porter, you are going to be amazed. She is a fantastic woman. If you've ever heard the Confederate Paul Revere, that's her. And that she was only married 4 times is another side story. Then we're going to go way, way back to the 1770s, 1760s, and a special treat for you. Daughters of the American Revolution are going to bring us the spouses of founders of our country. We'll have Martha Washington, Abigail Adams, Lucy Knox. How many people here know who Lucy Knox is, or William Knox? Very important guy. He is the guy that kicked the British out of Boston, and unfortunately for Mrs. Knox, that meant her parents left to go to England when that happened. And then we'll have, believe it or not, Betsy Ross tell us all about our flag. So first things first. First of all, I'd like you to do is get your phone out, check in, tell them that you're at Say When. Be sure you thank Laura for helping us out here and letting us use this venue for tonight. And then put your phone on silent, please. Thanks. Okay, I was just reading a fantastic history just this other day about Cynthia Ann Porter, or Parker. How many people know who she was? She was the white lady who was taken by Indians and then had a tough time coming back to her Anglo world. This was a comment that was written in that book that I found fascinating. There is history that is based on hard, documented fact. History that is colored with rumor, speculation, or falsehood. And then there's history that exists in what might be termed the hinterlands of imagination. We're going to get all three tonight, and I'm going to ask you at the end if you can tell me which one is which. So on behalf of Donna Dow, who I just walked in, who is the Main Street Director of Denison, the award-winning Great American Main Street Award, also the best Main Street in Texas for towns under 50,000. Thank you very much. Again, thanks Laura for hosting us here at Say When. And without further ado, I don't want to ruin his talk, but again, we are going to meet the first English-speaking man in Grayson County, Mr. John Hart.
Thank you. We're going to try something a little different. We're going to see if you can hear me on my personal microphone. I have a trouble standing still. I got to move around a little bit. Can you guys hear? Yes. Can you hear me? All right. Can you hear me? You're shaking your head no, but I'm right here. All right. My name is Captain John Thomas Hart. I was born around 1790 in Kentucky, or Virginia, or North Carolina. Okay, my parents didn't know. That's why I was born with 9 children, and they weren't even sure what state I was born in because they were pioneers and they moved around so much. My first 30 years of my life, I stayed up in Ohio, Indiana area. I trapped up there. And then I decided if I'm going to make anything of myself, I had to go where the future was. And the future was Texas. So I came down to first to Fort Smith in Arkansas. I got together a party of 9 other trappers. I got a creek guide to guide us. And I brought my dog with me too as well. That was very important. And I'll tell you a little bit later in the story why he was important. And we went down to what's called the northern part of Grayson, which is now the northern part of Grayson County, along the Washington River, the lived in Spanish there, but I was the first English speaker coming through there. And I was going to really blow your guys' mind by start speaking French and really throwing you, so you can try to figure this out. But I won't do that. When we got down here, we weren't alone either at that point. We also had the Wichita Indians. We had the Caddos, which were the Tonkawas, the Ionis, the Ichis. We also had Pawnees. We had Shawnees. We had Delaware. A little bit later, we had Chickasaw, Choctaw, Cherokee, Seminole. We had everyone you can think of pretty much in this area. The Shawnee Indians were in this area too. So when I came down here as a white European, I was among a lot of people. What we did was we brought down a party of 9. We were Creek Indian guides. The first thing we did, we went into the villages. There was a Delaware village, a Delaware Indian village in what is now called Grayson County. It was right along the edge of Cross River, very northern part of Grayson County, just south of the Red River. We also had Delaware tribe. Well, it was a Delaware tribe. The Shawnee tribe was actually just north of Edison, where common Edison is now. So the very first thing we did when we came down here, we went over to the villages and we introduced ourselves. One thing we did not want to do is run into an Indian tribe in their territory in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, if they didn't know we were there. And at the very beginning, we had very good relations with them. We traded, we stopped in, we got a pot, trade coffee, we trade sugar, we would trade things that they could not make themselves and didn't have themselves. And in response to that, they showed us where to hunt, where to trap, and the animals down here, the game down here was amazing. We had bison, we had wolves, we had bears, we had coyotes, we had pretty much anything that walked on 2 legs. We had foxes, muskrats, anything you can think of, and we started trapping. The trapping was so good that we kind of ruined it with the Indians. So some days we would go out and we would shoot 1 deer hide. Sometimes we ended up shooting 20 deer. And by the time we were through, we had quite a haul. And at this point, we became unwelcome with the Indian tribe. And one night we were raided and attacked. 2 of our 9 were killed. They ran off all our horses. They stole a lot of our supplies. And it was not a pleasant evening. I came here to make a fortune for my family and everything, so I said we're going to stay. Unfortunately, 7 other men decided they were going back. They told me that they were going to go back to our original camp, put everything up into a cave, and then come back and rescue us, get the rest of us as soon as we can. But fortunately, I never heard from them again. So it was just me, my Creek Indian guide, and my dogs, and we continued on trapping, occasionally fighting off the Indians. So occasionally, even my Creek guide was killed. And to my horror, too, my dog was separated, and I felt he was dead as well. At this point, I thought it was time for us to head home. I very quietly, silently moved my way back to our original village, our original camp. As I came upon it, I wanted to be sure that they had discovered it yet. I was sneaking up that evening, I heard a little sound behind me, and I was jumped. I was knocked down, almost knocked out, and I turned around and pulled my knife, and it was my dog. So my dog came and saved me. He was so excited, so glad that I was alive. I fed him, he never could stop tempting me, and I love that dog. So for the next 3 months, and I'll get into this a little bit, that what I decided to do, I was going to leave our store. I'm going to need you to hold this rifle, sir. Very important. Let's have a trigger thing. All right. Look at my manifest where we had stored. We had 68 packs of deer skins. And every pack of deer skin was weighed anywhere from 80 to 100 pounds. There's anywhere from 30 to 80 deer skin. I had 50 bear pelts. I had other furs, beaver, otter, wolf, fox, raccoon, possum, badger, muskrat, bobcat, ferret, skunk, and squirrel. I had 2 packs that took up another 2 packs. I had 10 cases of honey, 14 cases of bear oil. You didn't realize how expensive bear oil was until you had to get it out of the bear yourself. Okay? So all that stuff was there, and I had to find a way to get it home. So I took about the next 3 months building the canoe. I went down to the Washington River, river bottoms. I found a cottonwood that's about 60 feet tall, 5 feet around, and I cut that down. And then I took about a foot and a half of the diameter off that log. I used that wood in order to burn a hole in the center of the log in order so I could store all my goods. This whole process took me almost 4 months. It was something that at this point the Indians kind of left it alone. They said there's one guy, not really much of a threat. I had some of the Shawnees, some of the Delawares who I become friends with. They helped me out a little bit, and it took me literally 4 months to finish that canoe. When it was done, I was able to get everything into it, covered it with bear skins, put a rope on front of it so that we could pull it down the river, and then the trip began. But during that 4 months, and this is important about the dog, I spent a lot of nights pretty much alone, looking at the stars, and just me and the dog, Biscuit. I never gave him a name, but whenever I said Biscuit, he came, so that's what I have to do. I would sit there and just think about my life, what I'm going to do with my newfound wealth, and I'd talk to the dog, and he would talk back to me. Anybody else have a dog like that? Sir? No? Anybody? Anybody with a dog that talks back to you? Okay, there you go. I knew I'd find one person. Because I just wanted to let you know that I'm kind of a made-up character. I can come up with these stories. But when you start telling people that, okay, yeah, you may want to kind of keep that quiet. So that dog I loved and I took care of, and it took me almost 4 months to build that canoe, and we sailed it up the Washington River to the Red River, and all the way out to the Mississippi. First stopping at Jonesboro in Arkansas, Fort Smith, Arkansas. Then I was thinking I might have to paddle that canoe all the way down to New Orleans, sail all my goods. Remember, I had 2,000 to 3,000 deer hides. Here's the point I want you to remember. Deer hides, what is the male deer called? A buck. A buck. Okay, and that's pretty much what a deer hide is worth, $1. So that's what we call $1 a buck now, because $1 is about 1 deer hide. But I had up to 3,000 deer hides. I had 50 bear skins, similar to this black bear back here. I had all the cases of honey, cases of beer oil. I was going to make quite a bit of money. So I canoed that canoe up. I did it with some friends. Some of my Indian friends would join me occasionally. They'll pull me through the shallows and get me going. I made it all the way to the Mississippi River. I was hoping to meet a boat there, but I did not. Travel a little further south, so I got to a point where I did find a captain with a paddle boat, and I was able to sell all these furs, all this stuff to one person, and I was pretty well set now at this point. So I decided to come back. By the time I returned, by the time I left my home up north or left Fort Arkansas the first time, it was over 3 years. So this is not something you don't make money overnight with trapping. It's a matter of time. Over 3 years from the time I left, we began trapping until we were finally able to sell it. And now I was getting pretty wealthy. So I found out I didn't have to wear buckskin all the time. Or wear a skunk hat. You guys didn't notice that. So I came back to what's now the area of Grayson County. Spent a little time there. 1836 came along. The Texas paddle, the Texas Independence. I was promoted to captain. That's how I got my captain from the 47 men of the Red River Brigade. We were part of the runaway freight with Houston, and after that, I served with the militia in fighting the Indians in that as well. So it was a long life. I now bought some property. I bought some property in, well, actually, I was given 320 acres. We're good with that first. For my service to the Republic of Texas, serving in yard. 200 acres was in Cannon County, which became part of Grayson County. And some of it was also in Cook County as well. I rented, or I leased some of my property to a man by the name of John Moody. John Moody was a good man, and I gave him a 1-year lease, but I didn't realize that he was killed by Indians almost immediately. So for a while, my property sat unattended, and the scalawag up there that this lady mentioned his name a little bit sooner. This scalawag by the name of Holland Coffee, who owned the trading post up there. He was very wealthy. He had trading posts, he had a lot of land, he had a lot of slaves. He had the head of the county. When I trying to follow the law, what I did, I went up there and I sued him, as we should. But unfortunately, the jury found it all in his favor, even though I had the lease for the property. This continued for a while. And finally, what I had to do, I decided I became a little bit more involved in the community. Now, let me see here. I'm looking for something. Here we are. And so what I found out, I served on the very first court that we had in Grayson County, and Fannin County, excuse me. I also now became the very first sheriff of Fannin County. So now I thought I had some clout. So again, one more time we sued, we lost the suit. Then I had one last effort. I thought I'm going to go up and talk to his partner. And his partner's name was Mr. Silas Colville. And so on May 1st, 1841, I moved up there to talk to him. And unfortunately, that's where my story ends right at that point. Because I'm going to try to do this in a different way. And see, I'm just going to go over this tomorrow. You guys let me know how this works, everything. But Silas Colville actually murdered Jonathan Hart. He was brought up before the jury. Just like all the other juries at that time, he was found not guilty, that Jonathan Hart did not deserve to die. You guys have any questions for me on Jonathan Hart? First English-speaking trapper who came down to the Grayson County area. Again, we had Spanish, we had French, but none of them found it, they said, interesting enough to stay. But any questions?
Where are you buried?
Where am I buried? I have no idea.
With his dog.
I'm buried with my dog. Yeah, I am.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dale Anderson. Okay, you remember I said history could be colored with rumor, speculation, falsehood, and history? Not that I would accuse him of that or anything. Now we'd like to move on to, been introduced a little bit by that introduction there. We're going to talk to Miss Sophia Suttonfield Augenbaugh, Coffee Butt Porter. That's her entire name, from her maiden name to her last husband. So we're in the same time frame, and please, Miss Porter.
Well, before I shift into full Sophia mode, I do want to share a little bit. As a woman ages, there's a certain thing that has to occur, and that's probably glasses. All right, so before I begin, Pulitzer Prize winner Laurel Thatcher Ulrich is quoted as saying that well-behaved women seldom make history. She may or may not be familiar with our own local version of Scarlett O'Hara, but she certainly has this type of strong woman in mind. Early Texas was known for its colorful characters loping down the Trammel Trace, like Travis and Bowie, Houston, Maverick, and Austin. But rarely do we see the names of early Texas women who were as colorful as the wildflowers on the Texas prairie in the spring. When pressed, we find women such as Sophia, Suttonfield, Augenbach, Coffee, Butt, Porter, and there is hearsay that there was another name mixed in there as well. Her life reads like a spicy 19th century novel or a sensational journal of the period. So if you will allow, I will do my best to breathe life into the most spectacular moments of Sophia's adventures, read from her journal as only Sophia could. Good evening. My name is Sophia Butts, and I have been asked to share a few of my many adventures with you tonight. I thought no better way than to entertain you than to share some entries from my journal over the years. I encourage you too to keep a journal because you never know when someone might find your life just a skosh interesting. I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1815 to Colonel and Mrs. William Suttonfield. Imagine growing up in the fort environment with all the hustle and bustle, people coming and going. I always envied them and wondered where they came from and where they were going and what adventure awaited them. So in 1833, I joined that adventure when Jesse Augenbaugh came into town and took a notion to me. I couldn't resist the temptation to follow him in his pursuit of adventure in Texas, the land of prairie flowers, Indians, and most of all, freedom. We basically eloped and stole away south when I was 17. Once we got to Texas in 1835, however, I found myself abandoned, penniless, and without connections, no family, no friends. So I did what any self-respecting colonel's daughter would do, and I found my way to the Texan Army. I helped with whatever needed, washing, cooking, nursing, and the like. One significant entry in the journal records a date of notability. So April 21st, 1836, our scrape has come to an end. After entrapping Santa Anna and his army, our men routed the Mexicans. I made my way to the battlefield after the final blast, and I assisted Captain Sam Houston, patching him up as best as I could with what was left of my old petticoat. I spent a good deal of time thereafter, nursing Houston as well as some other ladies as he healed from his infirmity. In June of 1837, I found myself under the employ of a boarding house in the newly christened town of Houston, again taking the role of laundress and such. It was then and there, while I was up to my elbows in lye water, hands rougher than a cob, that I happened upon a new guest, the brother of my employer, Mr. Holland Coffee, a trader from the Red River, now a representative of the Texas legislature. He was smitten at once, and I saw, well, potential. July 25th, 1838, Congressman Coffee has spent much time imploring me to seek divorce from Jesse. On thinking of the notion to marry again, I finally have relented, filing for a bill of divorcement in Harris County. Absurd idea, as no one knows where he might even be, and of no other woman has completed that task. January 15th, 1839. Oh, glorious day. Finally, all that is to be has come to pass. Freedom from the foolishness and folly of my youth. Better days ahead. February 20th, 1839. Mr. Coffee and I were married today. There will be a ball in celebration forthwith with Houston in attendance. I will be sorry to leave it all behind, but yet adventure awaits. March 1839. We've been on the road for weeks, 600-mile journey all told. We'll stop at Warren's Trading Post for a honeymoon ball, then off to my new home. Home. Imagine a home of my very own, acres and acres to call my own, as a gift from my husband. June 1840. My little home is all put to rights. Coffee's old woolen blankets and suiting torn to strips and braided for my rug, a sturdy box for my clothes to hang, and I finished the last stitches on my quilt that Mr. Coffee laid out for piecing this time last year. I must be the happiest woman in Texas. Spring 1843. Mormons have been hired to begin building a proper house, one befitting of a merchant planter congressman and his wife. We will call it Glen Eden. December 1845. Visitors calling again, celebrating Texas's annexation into the United States. Sam Houston stopped in and brought an offering of a magnolia tree pod. We will plant it in the spring. My fondness for all things botanical yet grows in abundance, and cotton will bring a fair price yet again this season. October 1st, 1846. I received a post from Mr. Houston indicating he will stay over for the courthouse dedication in Shermantown early next year. We must complete and stock the wine cellar. I'll have to tell Coffee about that. October 25th, only days later, 1846. It is my deepest regret and woe. How does the tongue utter deceit? Rumors of Houston and I have led to a disastrous end. Mr. Holland is gone, and I am undone. December 1847. I arrived in New Orleans to sell a recent crop. I did happen to meet the most honorable gentleman, Mr. George Butt. Unfortunate last name, we'll change it to Butts, of Virginia, showing promise. Spring 1848. I am settling in as a new bride once again. Glen Eden is growing again. Construction continues with a new kitchen and what I've always dreamed of, a greenhouse. Everything is washed white and the garden is exploding with new roses, lilacs, and ivy. Even General Albert Sidney Johnson has brought a most interesting specimen, a catalpa seed pod. And the peafowl flock is growing, and I should have enough feathers to place in every room of the house. March 2nd, 1861. Secession. Do I now live in the fourth act of my homeland? First Mexico, then the Republic, then statehood, and now a Confederate state. I must acquire a cockade so I can make my secession bonnet. Christmas Eve, 1862. Tonight's ball was eventful. Quantrill's his men cast lots for the tassels of my hair ornament, shot them off as I danced. I felt the breath of the bullet pass my cheek. Fear almost won, but I kept my wits and waltzed on. His men are becoming somewhat of a menace. February 1863. George is off to Shermantown to sell the crop, awaiting his return. February 27th, 1863. I could not put to words the agony until now. My George, murdered by Quantrill's men. I know, because I saw the cold-blooded killer wearing his watch and chain. The citizens of Sherman and I are done, and anger burns. The lot of them are the most unwelcome and vile lot, and we are working to end their reign in the area. March of 1863. No sleep again tonight. Fended off another attack of rogue Kiowa. They were after the horses today. Cotton bales proved to make a makeshift fort. We are exhausted, grimy, and frustrated, but I will not give in. Glen Eden will prevail. January 30th, 1864. It's only been a fortnight since these events, but I must record on these pages the following events so I don't forget any details, as one ought not to do as time elapses. Colonel James Borland and his party came to dinner on their way to Washta. Pleasant company for a change. In the early afternoon, they took their leave, but not without warning me to watch for Union scouts, as they have been heard of in the area. And sure enough, late in the evening, here they came. I greeted them, pretended to be a proper, sympathetic supporter of the Yankee persuasion, as some of my neighbors are. We dined, and then I supplied them access to that wine cellar. After a while, when all were well teed up and staggering, I locked them in the cellar. I slipped out right about midnight. I took the closest steed, which happened to just be a mule, and I rode hard for Washta, crossing the Red River by moonlight. I arrived half frozen and relayed the location of the scouts, and Borland and his men lit out immediately and took possession of the prisoners. Borland teased me about my midnight ride, calling me a Confederate Paul Revere. Imagine. So here we are. It's February 19th of 1864, and I find myself at a crossroads. With the war growing closer, our protectors away fighting for the cause, a recent widow with no husband about the place, Comanches and Kiowas attempting to take all, I'm convinced I must get away. I'm heading to Austin, and I don't know what my future holds, but I know for certain adventure awaits. Farewell, my friends.
Remember when I said when we started, and then there exists history that might be termed the hinterlands of the imagination? Can you really believe that one lady did all of that? And she finished before another astounding part of the story, for when she would live in Glen Eden and then sold it and moved down into Sherman and found religion. A fascinating story, especially if you're a young girl who wants to know about someone who had an incredibly exciting life, despite the and such. I will tell you, we were talking before. I hope this gets to be a book because it would be a bestseller, and I would hope that Anne Hathaway would be the actress. Okay, like I said, shift your mind back more than a century. We're now going back to our revolutionary time period, a dark period, a civil war that was going on in the United States in the 1760s and 70s and 80s. And what we have the opportunity tonight is to talk some of the spouses of our founding fathers. And we're going to start off with Miss Lucy Knox.
We're going to be putting on kind of a skit for you guys. So we're going to get into position here and then we'll start.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Martha Washington, and my husband is George Washington, General George Washington, the general in command, commander-in-chief of the Continental Army during the War of the American Revolution. That began in 1775 and officially ended in 1783. Can you believe that war lasted 8 long years? And those were very difficult years for his side as much as was possible during that time. Oh, and I would love for you to meet her.
Well, thank you, Martha. I can never forget Martha because I was 22 years old when I went to Valley Forge and I met Martha and she was a great friend. I was really young. But, I wanted to go to camp. My husband was General Henry Knox. He was actually alive in the store before all of this happened. So this is not what I planned for when I met my Harry, which you know as Henry. But he was a hero, and he ended up being George's Secretary of War, Washington's Secretary of War when he became president. So here's another famous lady, Abigail Adams.
Thank you so much. I am married to the second president of the United States. And he was also a part of the second president of the United States. And he was also a part of the delegation. I had the important job of running things. I had to manage the finances. I had to raise our kids. I had to keep everything going. And one of the things that John and I did is we wrote letters to each other while he was away, more than at home. In fact, he was away from home one time for 9 years when he was in France. But we wrote letters to each other, over 1,100 in fact. And you may have heard of one of my letters. It was titled "Remember the Ladies" letter. If you haven't read it, you need to. I believe women need a voice in our new government too. Speaking of talented ladies, here's Betsy.
Hello, all. My name is Betsy Ross. I was not supporting I was sewing. I was sewing. I sewed uniforms for the men. I sewed uniforms for the men. I sewed bags I sewed materials in. I was